The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. Have you ever walked away from a conversation thinking, "Why did I say that?" Or worse, "Why did I let them get under my skin?" That moment, that split second where you react instead of respond, that's where you lose. Not because you're not smart, not because you're not capable, but because in social conflict, intelligence alone doesn't win. Control does. And here's the uncomfortable truth most people never realize. The person who stays calm the longest controls the outcome. Not the loudest, not the fastest, not the most aggressive, the calmest. If you want to understand psychology, power, and real social advantage, not surface-level advice, subscribe. Because what we're about to break down is the difference between being controlled and being untouchable. Let's get into it. First, you need to understand what social conflict actually is. Most people think conflict is about opinions, disagreements, or who's right. It's not. Conflict is a test of your emotional stability, your self-control, and your boundaries. And most people fail before this conversation even starts. Why? Because they walk into conflict trying to win, instead of trying to stay in control. Think about the last argument you had. Did you try to prove your point? Did you explain yourself? Did you feel the urge to defend your position immediately? Of course you did. That's what everyone does. And that's exactly why most people lose. Because the moment you feel the need to prove something, you've already given the other person leverage. So let's shift the frame. Mental superiority in conflict is not about dominating the other person. It's about refusing to be pulled into their emotional game. And that starts with the first principle. 1. Control your reaction, or someone else will. Every conflict begins with a trigger, a comment, a tone, a look, a subtle disrespect. And your brain reacts instantly. Why? Because your nervous system doesn't distinguish between social threat and physical danger. When someone challenges you, interrupts you, disrespects you, your brain reads it as a threat, so it pushes you to act. Speak faster, defend harder, raise your voice, prove your worth. But here's the problem. That reaction is predictable, and predictable people are easy to control. So what do you do instead? You pause. Not awkwardly, not nervously, deliberately. You let the moment breathe. Because that pause does something powerful. It breaks the pattern. It forces the other person to sit with what they just said. It shifts the pressure back onto them. And suddenly, you're not reacting anymore. You're deciding. Let me give you a real example. Someone makes a passive-aggressive comment in a meeting. Wow, you finally finished it. Took long enough. Most people react immediately. They explain. They justify. They defend. I had a lot going on you don't understand. And now they're stuck. Now they're playing defense. But someone with control. They pause, look at the person, and say, calmly, was that meant to be helpful? Now the pressure shifts. Now the other person has to explain. And that's the second principle. 2. The one who explains the most loses power. Think about it. Who explains more in a conflict? The confident person, or the one trying to justify themselves? Every extra sentence you add is an attempt to regain control. But it does the opposite. It signals uncertainty. It gives the other person material to work with. It opens doors they wouldn't have had access to. That's why mentally strong people speak less, not because they have less to say, but because they understand timing. They say what's necessary, and then they stop. Silence is uncomfortable. Most people rush to fill it, and in doing so, they reveal everything: their emotions, their insecurities, their intentions. While you observe. And that brings us to the third principle. 3. Don't take the bait. Not everything deserves your response. In fact, most things don't. Disrespect, sarcasm, subtle jabs. These are often tests, not real attacks. Tests to see if you're reactive, to see if you're easy to provoke, to see how much control you have over yourself. And the moment you react emotionally, you fail the test. So what's the alternative? Discernment. Ask yourself, is this worth my energy? Is this even a real issue, or just noise? Because engaging with everything is a sign of weakness. Selective response is power. There's a difference between being calm and being passive. Calm is controlled. Passive is avoidant. Mental superiority is knowing when to engage and when to disengage. And that leads to something most people get completely wrong. 4. You don't need to win the argument. Read that again. You don't need to win, because winning an argument often means losing something else. Your composure, your position, your control. Arguments are traps. They pull you into someone else's frame. Now you're defending. Now you're explaining. Now you're reacting. And while you're busy trying to win, you're actually losing leverage. So what do you do instead? You shift the interaction from argument to observation, from reaction to questions. Instead of saying, "That's not true," you say, "What makes you think that?" Now they're talking. Now they're explaining. Now they're exposing their thinking. And you're in control, because the person asking questions is rarely the one being controlled. Now let's go deeper, because control is not just about what you say. It's about how you carry yourself. 5. Your body speaks before you do. Before you say a word, people read you, your posture, your eye contact, your stillness. Nervous movements signal uncertainty, fidgeting, shifting, over-gesturing. These are leaks. They tell people you're not fully in control. But stillness is different. Stillness communicates confidence. It says, "I'm not rushed. I'm not pressured. I'm not affected." Try this. Next time you're in a tense conversation, slow everything down. Your breathing, your movements, your speech. Speak slightly slower than feels natural. Hold eye contact just a bit longer. Not aggressively, but steadily. you'll notice something interesting. The other person starts adjusting to you, because in social dynamics, people sink to the strongest emotional state in the room. If you're calm, they calm down. If you're reactive, they escalate. Which one do you want to be? Now here's where it gets even more powerful. 6. Boundaries are not explained, they're enforced. Most people think setting boundaries means talking, explaining, justifying, softening. I just feel like maybe I need a bit more respect. Number, that's negotiation, and negotiation invites pushback. A real boundary is simple, clear, direct, final. That's not okay. Don't speak to me like that. I'm not doing that. And then, silence. No follow-up explanation. No emotional speech, because the more you explain your boundary, the more it sounds optional. And here's the key. If someone crosses it again, you don't argue. You act. You disengage. You reduce access. You create consequences, because respect is not built through words. It's built through consistency. Now let's talk about something deeper. 7. Detach from the need to be liked. This is where most people lose before the conflict even begins. They want to be understood. They want to be liked. They want to avoid discomfort, so they soften everything. They smile when they shouldn't. They agree when they don't. They tolerate things they dislike. And in doing so, they give away authority. Because when your priority is being liked, you become easy to influence. But when your priority is self-respect, everything changes. You speak differently, you move differently, you tolerate less, and people feel that. They may not like it immediately, but they respect it. And in the long run, respect always outlasts approval. Let me ask you something. Would you rather be liked or taken seriously? Because in conflict, you rarely get both. Now, one final layer, and this might be the most important one. 8. Prepare mentally before conflict happens. Most people rely on improvisation. They hope they'll react well in the moment, but under pressure, you don't rise to the occasion. You fall to your training. That's why mentally strong people rehearse. Not physically, mentally. They imagine scenarios. If someone says this, how will I respond? If I feel triggered, what will I do? If I'm pressured, how will I stay calm? This builds familiarity, and familiarity reduces emotional reaction. So when the moment comes, you're not surprised. You're ready. And that readiness shows. It shows in your tone, your pace, your decisions. And people feel it. They sense that you're not reacting. You're executing. And that's what mental superiority really is. Not intelligence, not dominance, not aggression. It's control. Control over your reactions, control over your words, control over your presence. Because once you control yourself, you stop being controllable. And when that happens, something interesting shifts. People test you less, push you less, challenge you less. Not because you became louder, but because you became harder to move. So the next time you find yourself in a social conflict, don't rush to speak. Don't rush to prove. Don't rush to react. Pause. Observe. Decide. Because the person who controls themselves controls the situation. And the moment you realize that, you stop trying to win and you start becoming untouchable.